Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our Midnight Magic Musings channel. I am your humble servant and host, Lord Cephas. I'm joined by the star of the show, the Earl of Florida. Earl, how are you doing on this very, very late evening in the Midnight Magic Musing universe?
First, I can tell you, Mean Gene, that what you're going to find out Saturday night. I'm sorry. Wrong podcast. We'll get there eventually on Saturday night. But tonight, I'm doing wonderful. It is a little bit later than normal. You're going to have to flow with us. I feel a little bit of Mean Gene Oakerly. I
Uh,
got the little bit of the mustache. It's more grown in than his, but you know what? You know what I mean. I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, Lord?
I was not prepared for that level of energy that you just brought to the program, but I do like where you're coming and where you're going.
Did you like my little rendition of Mean Gene?
Well, it kind
It
of
doesn't matter if you liked it. Oh, sorry.
Wow, walked into that one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in case you don't know what's going on, the Earl and I have a very special announcement this evening. This Saturday night, World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE, will air their 2023 Royal Rumble live on pay-per-view on the Peacock Network and also on the WWE Network. That will air from 8 to around 11 p.m. Eastern Time, with a pre-show starting at 7. Well, the
Ish.
ish, right. The Earl and I will be watching that presentation. And then after that show is over, we are going to come over to YouTube. We are going to record our very first Combat One Wrestling podcast. It's something new that we are airing that we're going to be doing here under the Midnight Magic Musings channel. It's going to be a standalone show where we talk about the wrestling of the week or of the month, whether it's a premium live event or pay-per-view, or maybe a local show that we go to, or something else that we actually take time. And then there may be times we just reminisce about some old stuff. And that'd be okay too. But it's something that the Earl and I have a passion for. And we really want to be sharing that with our fans. And so we're going to do that again starting Saturday night. Immediately after the Rumble completes airing, we will come on, we will record our podcast, and then we will upload it to YouTube. So it'll be available probably sometime early Sunday morning, and it'll be released at that time. If you are subscribed, hit that notification bell, and you will be alerted when that show does become live. Earl, I'm excited about it. I know that you're excited about it. For those who aren't aware of what this is, it's basically it's a gimmick where they have a women's rumble and a men's match. And basically, to be eliminated from the match, you must be thrown over the top rope down to the arena floor. And this is important if you've been a long time wrestling fan. Both feet, that's right, must touch the floor. And so we're very excited about this. We're really this is part of the evolution of the Midnight Magic Musings channel and family. So we're very much looking forward to doing that. Earl, a few more quick thoughts if you have them.
Well, I mean, this is part of the behind the veil Wizard of Oz or whatever if you want to look at it. We grew up on Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair and Bob Backlund throwing out there, Jesse Ventura and some of these older, some of the classic era that we would consider classics, and that eventually grew into Sting and Lex Luthor. And if you don't know what any of these names mean, it's okay. We still love you. But if you do know what these names mean, then you're in the right place because this is some of the things we grew up watching it on Monday night when we'd flick back and forth between Nitro and Raw, and it was commercial break. Who's wrestling? Which one are we going to watch? And while we're doing that, we may or may not be practicing certain moves on one another or on my poor moose. God rest his soul. You know who I'm talking.
Your moose took a beating, but you know what? I give the moose credit. He always came back for more. Either we were doing moves on each other, him, or eating pizza. But that's a separate issue. That's a separate discussion
And a separate podcast.
Exactly, where we get into our primary foods when we get together and watch stuff. But we are going to get together and watch that and then record our thoughts on it. Very, very excited to do that. It's going to be different. It's going to be irreverent. We on this podcast, we typically do more news and our opinion on it. For this, we understand that some don't like it. We enjoy it, and we're going to share that love and that enthusiasm with the rest of you. So come along with us. enjoy the ride, like, subscribe to that show, give us some feedback. It really helps us in the YouTube algorithm. But you know what? It really helps us communicate with the people. Listen, look, we're a community, and that's what we want to do. So look forward this Saturday night. And we're really talking about Sunday morning. Let's be honest here, because we're going to
A
go
little
for,
bit.
yeah, it's a 3.5 hour show. We're going to talk for a while. So we'll have plenty to say. So look for that dropping on Sunday. And again, give it a thumbs up if you would. We greatly share that sucker out on social media. We greatly appreciate it. Well, Earl, we have that coming up. We're excited about that. We're really rekindling some things we've let lapse a little bit. But let's
Yeah.
talk about some of the more current things that are going on before we get to Saturday night. And I guess probably the
Box
first.
office.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about box office. I like where you're thinking here. Avatar 2, The Way of Water, has been a juggernaut. It just completed, 6 straight weeks at the box office. It has finished number 1. First time in almost 7 full years that a movie has held the box office for 6 consecutive weeks. First of all, that's darn impressive.
And who was the last one?
That would be Avengers Endgame.
Who is also ranked as number.
Well, they were number 5, but this week, coming out of the weekend, Avatar 2, The Way of Water, bumped them out of 5th place. So Avatar 2 is now in 5th place. They have Star Wars: The Force Awakens in their sights. They should pass them as long as they stay on target. They should get that done probably by the time you hear this recording or in the next day or two. And so that will place them very solidly at number 4. Here's the interesting thing. The next movie up, the one they're trailing, and they trail by approximately about 135 million. It's Titanic.
Which is another.
Yep, it's another James Cameron property. And I think they'll catch it, and I think they'll pass it. But kind of give me an idea. Are you surprised by the success Avatar 2 has, or is this kind of in line with what you were expecting?
Well, we talked about this a little bit last week about the time frame between 2009, which the first Avatar came out with, to now. I think some of the marketing here is the fact that it was released in December.
Mhm.
And over the last few years with the pandemic, there have been a lot of studios have been hesitant to go there because with the pandemic and then the economic issues, people pulling back spending and things like that. There have been less of a prevalence in going to theaters to watch movies. And it doesn't matter if it was Christmas or the 4th of July. There's been a very, very big difference between pre-pandemic spending at theaters and after pandemic. Now, Top Gun showed that it doesn't matter if you want to put something, evoke some emotion, nostalgia, some action, some star power, that it doesn't matter. They can bust right through that and fly to the top and gun it twice. I know that was bad.
That was dreadful. Actually.
That was 80s nostalgia there, like Top Gun. But either way, moving on before I get fired. I think that Avatar 2 does have a nostalgia factor. I think Avatar 2 does also have the fact that it is a visual feast from everything I've seen, and that it took that empty spot, and it's been a few years. So I think there are people that do want to go back, but they want an extravaganza. And I think Avatar 2 is a visual extravaganza. It has a solid cast. It has apparently a story that I haven't heard anything bad about it. I haven't had, where the first one came out, you heard a lot of, it's Pocahontas with blue people, it's Ferngully.
Right.
But with this one, I haven't heard anybody really talking smack at all, and I don't know if that's maybe I'm not just listening enough, but I'm not really hearing this undercurrent of, there's going to be hate for everything, but I'm not hearing this undercurrent of hate or negative opinions. Maybe I'm not listening. What about you? Have you heard this negative opinions about Avatar 2?
No, it's weird because we have a lot of friends that are across all political aisles. They're across all ideological aisles. They are all different fans of different genres, print media, whatever it is that you're talking about. And as a whole, I've talked to my friends who have seen this, and some of them are like, "Well, I'm not exactly sure what I saw, but it was good." And I
Yeah.
and I accept that as a real response, and how you felt. But I mean, you have a movie that is basically a family movie that
Mhm.
appeals to a broad section of the population. There is action, adventure, there are stakes in the movie that appeals to a swath of,
Like
of
wooden or
no, there's
like
no.
pikes
Well,
or
there are no vampire.
stakes?
There are no vampires that are being off in this particular movie. At least
Like
maybe that's in the extended cut, the director's cut. I don't know, which will be 37 hours. I understand on Blu-ray or on demand. But I've heard only great things
accurate.
about it, and that's kind of surprising in the day and age in which we live. You typically have people find sides, or some folk are just never happy about things. But that's not the case with this movie, and you have to understand, and hopefully our listeners understand this. When Disney bought Fox, this was already in the works. And what typically happens is a lot of these feature films that are high content, high producing, high return movies, it's built into their contracts when they're written that if a studio gets bought out or something, these movies don't go away. They still have to be made. So Disney bought Fox and a property that was going to be made. And you heard James Gunn talk about we've got to make a certain amount of money to be able to make the next couple of movies. Understanding he shot two and three together. But I
And
think
part of four.
I think though as time has progressed, I think I get a little bit more of what he was saying. It wasn't so much about the numbers in relation to their movie, it was the numbers in relation to the new studio that now owned that particular property. I think in his mind, he was thinking we need to hit a high enough number that we land somewhere high enough on the food chain of what's an important IP. Because remember, for the last, well, since Disney bought Marvel, so we'll say the 2012 era of the Avengers movie and going forward, that's been their IP. Now
Yep.
they have Star Wars, and it's made over $1 billion, and there's I mean props to them, but we've seen the Star Wars franchise become more of a TV or a streaming property than a
Well,
movie property, and so when Marvel's successfully navigating the waters and making money, the next IP that Disney throws out there, which is an established one, admittedly, needs to land somewhere and show that, hey, 2009 to 2023, we still pack a punch with that. We're still viable as an IP. And I think that's a huge win for Disney as a whole.
well, I think that's an interesting point you brought up was so Disney bought Marvel after Iron Man 1
Mhm.
and started to hold the phase. Then what was the next big thing they bought? They bought known Lucasfilm.
Mhm.
So they could have Star Wars. And then what was the big thing they bought that included Avatar?
They bought Fox,
They bought
20th
Fox.
Century Fox.
So and you have to and so Avatar has been talked about and has been on the books and has been something that's been in the wings for quite some time. So when Fox finally started the process, yeah, I'm thinking I see a pattern here. Disney does something, but then they bought had Marvel going,
Mhm.
and then they had that going, but they're like, it's time to diversify or potentially get something else going, a franchise, a company, just in case.
Mhm.
So they went with Star Wars and hate it, love it. We've all talked about this
Right.
several times, usually every podcast, in all honesty. You have the sequel series, trilogy, then you have the series and whatnot.
Mhm.
So they've plundered a bit into the Star Wars universe, but then now they went with Fox and they've got several other different IPs, but a big one obviously is the one we're talking about right now is Avatar.
Right.
And so you have 2, 3, and 4 where they're being filmed simultaneously. And let's face it, two knocked out of the park. Two paid for 3 and 4.
Mhm.
You know, and so anything 3 and 4 makes is making money. I mean, as compared to most sequels that film separately and years apart,
Right.
this is a different process. So I think you know what, maybe this is going to be the thing that Disney does from now on is every couple of years, 4 or 5 years, they start looking for another big their next big thing.
That's an interesting point, but that's also a very dangerous way of doing business because
Or a very profitable way of doing business.
it
It's a
it it
knife's
it,
edge.
it is, as long as you can get those properties at a reasonable value and those properties sustain
Well,
their value.
you can't tell me that Avatar wasn't one of those gems that was shining for during that deal between Fox and Disney. You know that Avatar had to be one of those big IPs that
Mhm.
drew them in, but they're not the only IP. You know, coming along with Fox was also a lot of potential vitality for the Marvel universe. You know,
First of
with
all,
the
I never thought
return.
I would hear you use the word vitality in a podcast, but please continue. I'm
Word of the day.
impressed.
Thank you.
I like that. Continue on.
So I mean, there are other franchises and IPs that come with Fox. It's not just Avatar. So while Avatar was, I think, one of the shining gems of
Mhm.
the the potential income that Disney was looking at, it's not the only one. But I think James Cameron and the crew at Avatar have rocked it out the last 6 weeks. And as we just mentioned previously, there hasn't been really any negative things. And that's, I think, another big part of what made Top Gun Maverick and
Mm.
Avatar 2 so successful is one, they were a visual.
Oh, Earl, we lost you. You dropped off in what you were saying. We lost your volume. You were talking about the movies were visual, but then we couldn't hear what you said. All right, we hear background noise. Go ahead.
Okay, no, I was
Okay,
just
go
saying
ahead.
that I think that the word of mouth was very strong with these two
Mhm.
films, and that's what has given Avatar, I think, the great strides and legs. Well, I mean, Top Gun over $1 billion as well. So these two movies have, showed that post pandemic and post economy issues and everything that you can still make money, but more importantly, the fans and the audience can still have a lot of fun and have a spectacle and an event when they go to theaters.
And I really think that's a key in what you're saying is that nostalgia only takes you so far. We
We'll
see
find out
that.
Saturday night.
Wow, again, walked into that one. It's been a very rough podcast so far for him, taking a beating, but it only carries you so far. You need a story that attracts people, and Avatar 2 had that. Top Gun Maverick has that. They're both nominated for Oscars, so good on them for getting a nomination there. And we'll see, will a populist type film win, or will it be one that may be a little bit more off the beaten path? I'm not a big fan of watching the Oscars. I don't let them inform me of what movies I should or shouldn't watch, but I am going to be curious to see if any of the bigger movies do get perhaps best movie. We'll see what happens there, but I want to go back to something you were talking about how important this was as a win for Disney. One of the interesting things, and they're coming up on they have an earnings call in the next couple of weeks. Bob Iger, it'll be his first one since he's come back. Since they dumped Chapek in the middle of the night at an Elton John concert. Legitimately, that's where he was fired. So we're going to see what they're talking about in terms of numbers. But one of the things that I find interesting is, Disney is not as flush with cash as people think they are.
No, they're
A-
not.
And one of the main reasons that's the case is, obviously they purchased Fox. They have the controlling stake in Hulu, although they're going to have to finish buying that out in the next couple of years, and that's going to be a
Yeah.
big number. But one of the things they did is they had to chase down all of these contracts that Lucasfilm had with distributors and distribution rights. They had to buy out TNT because
Hmm.
TNT had the exclusive rights to the Star Wars franchise. Same issue with some of the Marvel stuff. And so they had to run around chasing this down, trying to get it. And I promise you, they spent a tremendous amount of money buying out these contracts so they could dump all of it on Disney Plus. And I understand why they did that. But that actually leads us into another topic that I want to bring up, and that is Disney has released the information over the last couple of days that they are readjusting their growth targets and their financial solvency targets for Disney Plus. And by that I mean they are lowering some of their expectations for how many subscribers they're going to be able to get. Now, we've talked about this in a bunch of different ways on this show previously, but I want to throw this out at you and get your take on it. I kind of feel like, and this is just an opinion, feel free to tear it apart as you've done all the others. Um, I think Disney is maxed out in a lot of ways, their subscriber base. And let me explain why. If you are a Star Wars fan, you have Disney Plus.
Exactly.
If you are a Marvel fanatic, you have Disney Plus.
Definitely.
Outside of that, what else does Disney produce to draw potential subscribers in?
And I think that is one of the questions, and I think that also leads back to their purchases, is they have Disney Plus. When they bought Fox, they also got a lot of movies that they could either flop over here at Hulu or
Mhm.
Plus. When they bought Lucasfilm, same thing. You see us continue the franchise with Indiana Jones coming
Right.
up this year, and and that's was through Lucasfilm and whatnot. So the question is what does Disney Plus have to offer that's other than Marvel and other than Star Wars? And I think they're going to have to start. We mentioned this before. They have to readjust their expectations when it comes to
Mhm.
money. You're not going to make a 250, $300 million movie that's going to make $1 billion every time. If
Right.
that's your model of success, you're going to have a few setbacks, as
Yeah,
we saw with
absolutely.
John Carter. You're going to have something blow up in your face eventually.
Sure.
Now, that's not me knocking John Carter. I like the books. And you know what? Oddly enough, I enjoyed the movie for what it was. But the thing is, if you don't look at the model like Puss in Boots 2 has, uh, you've almost quadrupled your budget and
Right.
your marketing.
Right.
And yes, it's at 300 million. I'll probably hit 320 million, maybe 330.
Probably.
But I'm like, that's wise spending. That's if they were to break even, $85 million isn't that bad. You
Right.
can most likely uh, collect that. But if you don't hit your 300 million for a movie or 200 million, you look at something like the Lone Ranger that Disney also did. Some of these they
Man.
hurt, and that was not even making back their budget, let alone the marketing that they did. So a lot of these studios, not just Disney, are going to have to readjust what they call a success.
I
I mean,
agree
look,
with that. Yeah.
you look at the Blair Witch Project. It cost what,
Now
a
there is a
couple.
name of a movie I've not heard in a very long time.
But if you remember when that movie came out, it was like a couple million tops, and it made
Tops.
like a
Yep.
100 million or something.
Mhm. Oh yeah, it
And
was. And if you watch it, you just sit there and go,
what am I watching?
"Huh,
But that
huh."
movie set a trend. It led to the shaky cam genre, but it
Right.
also led to a lot of greenlighting lower budget films that had to focus on story and talent and things like that to make the movies well. And so it did open up a whole new revenue and opportunity for smaller films. And right now we're still hanging on to the blockbuster films of the 90s and the 2000s, where there are these massive events, so they have to have this massive price tag.
Right.
And I don't think we're there anymore. I think
So,
we're
okay.
we're back at, we're more of an intimate setting now.
So it's interesting you bring that up because Comcast had their earnings call at like 9 o'clock this morning. Absolutely. Who does that? Comcast, apparently. They're the ones who do that. And I didn't get to
On a
listen to
Thursday?
on a Thursday. So I didn't get to listen to the entirety of the conference call because, day job, things you have to do. But one of the interesting points that was brought up on the conference call was they are Comcast, Universal, is the number two rated company for theatrical films for highest grossing movies over the last year. Obviously, Disney's number one, right?
Yeah.
But Universal's a solid number two. And you go back through the movies and see what they produced. You had the Minions last year. What will come of Kevin? You have Puss in
Damn it.
Boots. Yeah, yeah, Puss in Boots,
Damn it.
who's still active today. They're pretty well positioned to be successful for the future because they found a way to limit the budgets and then make a tremendous amount of money in theaters. And one other item they have that Disney Plus does not allow Disney to do Universal will contract out their movies. For
Mm-hmm.
example, they'll put it on Netflix, but you know what? Netflix is going to pay a premium
Mm-hmm.
to have that movie. When Disney came up and got all of this stuff and bought it all up so they could put it on the network, what they did, and I'm not saying it was a bad decision necessarily, was they cut off a lot of that revenue that comes from placing these movies on these other platforms. Whereas Universal still has that active and it's working very, very well for them. And so you were talking about the IP situation. I do wonder in hearing what you were saying and thinking about that, at a certain point of diminishing returns, which I think is the term that you used.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying Universal is going to pass them. That's not what I'm going to say. I will say they had an amazing fourth quarter in their parks. They're building new parks. We've got Nintendo World coming. We've got a theme park coming in Frisco, Texas, of all things, which is tremendous. We've got something they're putting out in Vegas. I think for the first time in a long time, Disney as a conglomerate is being pushed. They're being pushed by number two and by number three. Disney Plus is a good service, but I'll be honest with you, how much content do they actually drop? Now, listen, I'm a nerd and I love National Geographic. I watch that stuff to relax. I listen to whoever the voice is of that penguin documentary, and I'll just sit there loving on my
Morgan
dogs
Freeman.
and I'll just sit there and love on my dogs and watch and be like, oh, they're so adorable. I do stuff like that. And they drop a lot of content
Mm-hmm.
on Nat Geo, and it's really good stuff. It appeals to me. But overall on Disney Plus, where is the material? Yeah, you have a Star Wars every once in a while, a Marvel property. They did National Treasure. They tried here a while back. They put a BTS concert on Disney Plus, and even that didn't spike the numbers that much, even though there is a BTS army of which my oldest is a member. I'm a junior member. I'm doing my best to support Jim and Suga and all 7 of the BTS members. But
Oh, I thought we were talking about behind the scenes. I was like, what behind the scenes?
they're the Bang Tang Boys. How do you not know that, sir? How do you not know? But they're on there, and it's a very popular concert. I've seen it twice. And but even that's not enough to draw in new subscribers. You already have a subscriber base. And I think that is a challenge that Disney is facing going forward. How are they going to make up some of those lost revenue sources? Are you making it up at the park by raising prices? That's something Chapek was doing. And in some cases, and Iger's talked about this, some of the pricing's out of control. Yes, you had more people spending more money in the park than ever before. But it's like inflation. It goes up, therefore you're paying more, but that also means more dollars are being spent. And so Disney is in an interesting position. It's not precarious by any means, but over the next couple of years, we're really going to see how is Disney going to weather some of the challenges, not just externally, for example, the Reedy Creek District stuff that's happening in Florida, but also internally with some of the decisions and things that they've made. And again, I'm not saying they're bad decisions, but we all know as adults, choices have consequences. And so they've made some really good IP acquisitions, like you're saying, but how do you manage that long term? I think that's going to be very interesting to watch.
I think what's interesting is we're talking a lot about Disney Plus and Disney and things like that with Hulu tossed in and ESPN, since they're now what's interesting is we're giving all the attention to Disney right now, but if you want to wonder how they're doing, you have to look at the competitors. And we talked about Universal doing so well, and I think they're one of the only studios that managed to stay out of the streaming wars. And
do you count Peacock as part of that?
Yeah,
but I don't know about streaming wars though. That's not really. I think you're right. Yeah,
Peacock has a free plan. They give half their product away for free with ads, mind you. But then they have all their content with ads, and then they have a free tier. So Peacock is a little bit different because Netflix doesn't have a free one. Disney Plus, Hulu don't have free ones. HBO don't. Showtime, Stars, none of these other ones have a free platform to use. And so and you look at Netflix, and they're canceling everything left and right. They're
True.
they're being very particular and being very tight, and you have fans raising up and crying. Like there's one, The Warrior Nun, that season two had outstanding reviews, and everybody loved it, and it got canceled, and now you have everybody crying and rolling in the ground and everything.
Sure.
uh you know but then you look at HBO, and how many times has they bought or merged in the past few years?
Mhm.
Discovery Plus fell to the wayside. So I'm like, the streaming wars, I see us coming to a climax soon, because uh so there's going to be some very clear cut winners
Mhm.
and some losers who are going to be absorbed into the winners, or
Well,
something
yeah.
along those lines. And I think Universal, with their ability to keep some of their content that they can piecemeal out and get the extra revenue, as you mentioned, Netflix, you want this? Give me the money. Oh, we want
Yep.
HBO, Showtime, Stars, whatever, and that's something that HBO and Disney can't really do right now, because they're creating content, but then they're turning around and it's got to come home.
Well, exactly.
Or
And it's not enough content
no.
to feed the masses. Netflix has always annoyed me because I never know when stuff's coming, other than Stranger Things or what Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's obviously able to follow, but there's so many things that get buried on there that are never seen. Disney Plus has the opposite problem. There's not enough content going up. I
Yep.
guess it appeals to a mass audience to keep people's interest. People will cancel their subscription. And then
Yeah.
Mandalorian season 3 comes out the first part of March. Some people will resubscribe. Now they're smart with it because they drop one episode a week. So they
Yep.
keep you for
You
that,
have to
that
say.
8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever the number of episodes is, and then they're done.
You
Or
know
they
what?
wait until they all drop, pay for a month, binge it.
I think Disney and HBO and Netflix have figured out the model with that, because when they drop everything, you can just wait till your series dropped, or wait till two series drops, and you can get it, you watch it, and you cancel it. With them, especially with these larger shows like The Last of Us or The
Mhm.
Mandalorian or things like that, or Stranger Things, you drop an episode, and if you don't watch it in that first few days or week, you can't wait till the end of it, because it's been spoiled
I
half the
know.
season or
Yeah,
the finale. So it's very intelligent with them no longer dropping them all at once, which makes me sad, because remember, the days of binge watching
sure,
is now
sure.
gone.
Right.
But it's a good marketing ploy, because if you don't subscribe and watch them as they drop, Facebook or Twitter or Google or news, whatever app you have, is going to spoil something for you, and you're going to go on a murderous rage and cry and kick your feet and then resubscribe.
One last thing I want to point out in talking about the streaming that you were mentioning is Peacock has had a tremendous growth over the last year and
Yeah.
in the fourth quarter. Can you guess what's the one thing on Peacock that has driven far more subscriptions and binge watching? Take a guess. What do you think it might be?
Battlestar Galactica.
You are a heathen. And you may not be allowed to speak any further if you ever say those words to me unless it's got 1980 attached to it.
Now who's the heathen?
That
Okay.
would be me. Absolutely, yes.
I would have to say maybe it starts with yellow.
It does start with yellow. It does end with stone. And if you choose to combine the two words into a
Stone
compound
yellow.
word, there you go. A little backwards. We're reading right to left here. But Yellowstone has been a huge boon
Yeah.
to Peacock because they have all the latter the prior seasons.
Hmm.
Paramount Network, Paramount Plus airs the most current ones. And so
And
if you look at them, think about what they've done. How good are they? How good a position are they in? I mean, they basically have the Yellowstone verse. I guess that's what we'll call it, the Yellow verse,
yeah.
or the Sheridan verse. Taylor Sheridan, who is the writer director of all those shows, Tulsa King, 1923, 1883. There's a another show of a
66
famous
or
lawman. Yeah,
something.
famous lawman is coming up as well. He owns Paramount,
Yeah.
and good on him. You know what? Glad for him. Good entertainment. I enjoy those shows, but they found their niche and they're running hard with it. And so Disney is on a little bit different level, and so they're held to a different standard. And you can drop a Yellowstone episode, and now they're on hiatus for the mid-season finale for 1923 and for
Yeah.
Yellowstone. They're not coming back till the summer. So you have grousing in the Cephas household about that. We'd like to see some additional episodes. But you know what? Paramount Plus is a really good value for what you get, and you get CBS Live. So if there's things on CBS you want, you
Yep.
can certainly get that as well. And so we'll see how this plays out. I'm not saying the world is crashing, but it's just very interesting hearing and seeing the financial dynamics that some of these companies are dealing with, and then how other companies have really found a niche and done very, very well for themselves.
Yep.
One of the other things they talked about on the conference call was the World Cup, which, it's only going to happen every 4 years. So you really can't,
Is that Hogwarts?
it's not Quidditch, it's soccer.
Oh, my
Yeah.
bad.
So just so you know, but that only happens every 4 years. So you kind of have to factor that out of any financial gains that come along. So it's going to be interesting to see. The other thing I would keep an eye on is, does Disney spin off ESPN? ESPN is very big on live sports and programming, and that's, in some cases, that's really the only thing that is must see because it's happening in real time.
Yep.
But there's a lot of push from members of the board and from outside entities to spin that off. I don't think they do, because I think they need that, because Disney, ABC, ESPN, they've tied that identity together.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes with that, but it certainly bears watching going forward. Speaking of Disney, one last thing I'll say to Disney Plus is, by changing their target market, I think that helps with the investors. And we're by no means an investment show, but Wall Street for 2 to 3 years during the pandemic, all they did was push for streaming numbers and subscribers. Now on the other side of that, it's changing.
Yeah.
Streaming and numbers are not the important thing. And so when you let Wall Street drive it, which they do, that's just the way we are, life in America, you can put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, and then all of a sudden it changes on a dime, and then you're having to be reactive. And we both know, having worked for major companies and organizations in our careers, the bigger the company, the slower the gears grind, and the slower that turn takes to turn that ship around or to point it a bit of a different direction. So Iger coming back is interesting. How will Disney do? They've got people who are angling for seats on the board, a lot of internal, a lot of hostile stuff going on. And so it's not just, hey, come to our parks and that's all we're worried about. They got a lot on their plate
Yep.
that they're having to deal with right now.
And one of the things on their plate is the potential inclusion of a Miss Aurora Monroe.
Interesting. That is a fantastic segue. What the Earl is referring to is, there was an article covered in Bound into Comics this week, where Nate Moore was being interviewed and being asked about the X-Men and including them into the MCU. And what he actually said was, there were two names that popped into his mind right away, and that was Storm and that was Bishop. Now, if you're a longtime listener of this program, I said several months ago that the idea was to bring Storm into the Black Panther universe. In the comic books, she was married to T'Challa for a while, and put her as the leader of Wakanda. I still think that's going to happen, really, from a licensing standpoint and a toy or collectible standpoint. That makes the most sense. So I'm going to hold to my guns on that one. I think it's interesting that he brought up Bishop and he brought up Storm as the go-to ones that we really need to see. I grew up an X-Men fan of the comics. I was an X-Men 97 fan of the animated series. It's insane. Animation change, characters change, stuff made no sense sometimes because it would be aired out of order. But I loved it on Fox Kids, right, back in the day. I'm a little confused that would be your go-to X-Men. If you asked me, Earl, I would say Wolverine, which is going to be addressed in Deadpool 3 in some form or fashion. I would say Professor X or Magneto or Cyclops. Those would be the big characters that would jump out to me as really being important for the franchise. It kind of feels like, if you bring in Bishop, you bring in Storm, you're just trying to plug holes a little bit in existing franchises. And I don't know that's the best use of those particular IPs, but I'm going to hand it off to you. What do you think?
For the X-Men, the mutant kind coming to the Marvel universe now.
Yes, that's correct. The mutants.
Um,
And we've lost your audio again. So while the Earl is fixing his audio so we can hear him again, it is interesting though that we're finally getting some movement and some discussion in the mutant saga, actually potentially incorporating some in. Go ahead, Earl. You were saying.
yeah. So yeah, those two with their history, it has to happen. Interesting enough, the last decade, Magneto has been more of a hero than a villain,
Yeah,
per se. When he went and what was it, where he became the headmaster for a while,
he
and
did. Yes.
but it's interesting that these two are the most important figureheads to
Mhm.
usher in the mutants. But then after that, I'm a very strong fan of the OG5 X-Men.
Okay. All
uh,
right.
I like Cyclops because you can build him into eventually being, getting you're gonna factor enough charisma, and you can continue the X-Men series for a long time, even when it's time for Xavier to go into the background.
Mhm.
And he's also a very important figure with Storm because, as you know, you had two different X-Men teams for a while.
Yep.
So, you could have a blue and gold kind of
That's right.
thing
Yep.
going on, and
Yep.
that's how you can introduce others. You could potentially bring in Bishop and Wolverine, because the original five was Cyclops and we'll call her Jean Grey, even though she went by Marvel Girl,
Mhm.
Iceman, Angel, Archangel, and
Correct.
Beast pre-fur, but I'm fine with giving him fur. So I mean, I think it's important to I really want them, but I also understand the concept behind money and popularity. Bishop's popular, Storm's popular, Wolverine's popular, Gambit's popular, Rogue's popular. So I can completely understand bringing in popular characters too. But the plus side with Marvel being such a large entity now that spans film and TV, that
Mhm.
you have a lot of opportunity to introduce these characters.
I
And
didn't hear you mention Jubilee in there. Was that just an oversight on your part?
and you never will.
That's really not nice.
But Shadowcat and Colossus, I'll take them.
That could work. Or are we gonna get Firestar from Spider-Man or Spidey's Amazing Friends from back in the
You know what?
79 to 81 series?
I'll take him too. But
Well, that she was a she though, and they actually put her in the comics based on the popularity of her appearances in that cartoon. She was actually written into the X-Men
so
continuity.
so as we talk about the introduction of one potential comic book team
Mhm.
to film and or TV, we should now probably talk about one comic book team or two comic book teams that are now leaving TV for good.
Ooh, that's an excellent segue. Well done, Earl. Well done. What he's referring to, if you have not heard, is it was announced earlier today that Doom Patrol and Teen Titans are ending after both will have produced their fourth seasons. Both series will end following those finales. Look to be
And
about
before
6 episodes per franchise.
And before you cry out, death to James Gunn, it actually is not his fault. These things were in process of being done before.
And we lost him again. The Earl's audio has dropped out. But what he was saying was that um, this was in process when James Gunn was hired. This was not a decision that he made. This was already in the works. He just happens to be the figurehead. Okay, Earl, you're back. Go ahead.
No, so as you said, it's not his fault. He's just the figurehead of the new variant of the DCU going forward now.
Right.
But he did say he does have the power to potentially bring back certain actors to play certain characters. He never said.
And he just dropped out again. We're very sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We're having some of these audio and technical issues. But you're right. What Earl was saying is he did not say he couldn't bring these people back in future iterations, future movies, future projects. that is a possibility.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, does it hurt me to my core? I'm not a big Teen Titans live action fan, much more the Teen Titans series that was on Cartoon Network. And I'm not going to pretend Teen Titans Go.
Oh Lord.
It has to be enjoyed for what it is. And I can do that. I can appreciate that.
What about Teen
Um,
Titans versus Teen Titans Go?
not only can I appreciate it, I need more of it. It's like the universe imploding upon itself as singular quantum events have collided, and so I like that as well. But I'm always sad to see a superhero property go.
Yeah.
Now you start looking at what Warner has done, or the DC universe specifically. Doom Patrol goes away. Teen Titans goes away. Flash is going away at the end of season 9. Although props to them for bringing back Oliver Queen, Stephen Amell, for, at least for one episode in the final season. You have Black Lightning went away. You have
Stargirl went away.
Stargirl went away. She aired the finale last month, actually, and that was
Yep.
her third season. That was the end of that. Supergirl went away as well.
Legends of Tomorrow went away.
Legends of Tomorrow. Swamp Thing only lasted that one season, and it just disappeared over in the corner somewhere on the shelf, never to be seen or heard from again.
That woman. Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And then here's one for you, and that is Naomi, which I have opinions, but we're not going to go on that tonight because the Earl would have to come over to my house and it actually literally dragged me out from in front of my computer. But all those shows have gone away. And so the question has to be asked, Earl, with the exception of Peacemaker, which appears to be on solid footing on HBO Max. Do you think we're starting to see DC kind of move away from putting this type of content on an HBO Max, or well, not on a CW, because they sold it last week for $20 in a bag of peanuts, basically.
Dumbo now owns
Yeah,
it.
exactly. It was Operation Dumbo Drop. Do you think that we're going to see any more superhero related material drop on HBO going forward?
I have to say absolutely. And the reason for that is all the ones that we've mentioned that have fallen by the wayside and have been casualties of the war, they've either been ending, coming near their end, or they're part of the Arrowverse, or
Right.
whatever verse you want to call them now.
Mhm.
The Arrowverse was technically part of the DCEU. Because remember, you did have Ezra Miller show up during that. Yes, yeah, Ezra Miller was there on the Flash. We don't talk about it much, but there's a lot of cameos
Yeah.
in the Flash. But so that inclusion there technically linked the DCEU with the Arrowverse, and so I think that as James Gunn comes in and he's looking to clean slate, he's going to want to wipe it because we already know we have Peacemaker. We already know that he has some ideas for Green Lantern, which has been in development hell for as long as there have been Arrowverse shows.
So John Diggle's going to have his own show.
No. I'm pretty sure John Diggle will never be mentioned again. I know he's hardcore trying for Justice U, but Justice U has too much of a connection to the Arrowverse for me to think that it's going to get a green light.
What about
And
Gotham? What about Gotham Knights? Because it debuts in a month or two.
I saw the trailer for that, and I have no idea what universe that's connected to. It does not appear to be connected to the Arrowverse. It also not sure if it's connected to any other verse because from the trailers, spoiler alert, Bruce Wayne is dead, and Gotham knows Bruce Wayne is Batman, and we know that Batman's dead. So the main kid is the adopted son of Bruce Wayne, who's teaming up with some of the villain's children and a Carrie Kelly, who we know from Frank Miller's Future, becomes Robin. So I'm not entirely sure where that even lands in any connected form. I'm just going to sit back and watch it and see how it goes. I know that every fans of Supernatural will be glad to see their favorite angel in a trench coat is now their favorite DA in a trench coat.
Right.
So props to him, but I'm not sure how that will actually factor in. That might be a weird standalone, kind of like how the Batman. We're not sure yet if it's going to be connected or it's going to be
Mhm.
disconnected like the Joker series. But there are a few ideas and properties that are in play and being talked about being brought to a TV series format, whether on HBO Max or whatnot. But these are all shows that will be interconnected to the new DCU under James Gunn. So I do believe we will see a continuation of TV shows, comic book shows, because Marvel at Disney Plus is racking it up.
Mhm.
Amazon has The Boys. They have The Boys, a
They have a spinoff
college
coming, don't
thing.
they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually Arnold Schwarzenegger's son, Patrick, will be in that. Interesting. They also have the very highly rated Invincible, which is a cartoon.
Yes. Yeah,
But
That's a Kirkman production.
yeah, interestingly enough, second season is coming. However, they are confirmed that they are in the process of wanting to do a live action film of Invincible as well. That's apparently in the works for a few years. So I mean, if I'm HBO and Warner Brothers, you can't say no to having a serial variant of storytelling for your superheroes when everybody else is doing it and with varying success. But it's still a thing, and obviously Peacekeeper has a season 2 coming out, so they're not
Right.
going to be against it. So I think we will see serial formats of comic heroes continuing in one form or another on
Mhm.
HBO. That was a long version. The short version is yes, I do believe
Right.
that there will be more.
And that's really going to be interesting to see what is their procedure. How does HBO Max view some of these shows? Do they get the Netflix treatment, get yanked a year or two in, or is there an opportunity to build a fan base? You mentioned something earlier about the fans are all in an uproar. The shows got canceled. Well, here's the reality. If you're already a Netflix subscriber and you fall in love with a show, and people aren't subscribing for that show, they're watching the show, but Netflix gets no money. If you're
Exactly.
already a subscriber, not being smart, but Netflix doesn't care. And
Hmm.
so we'll see how HBO does when they begin to deal with that issue with some of these newer shows that they may be launching. The Last of Us notwithstanding, which based on what you were telling me before we started recording, been solid so far through the first two episodes. And I know you wanted to touch on that tonight.
Well, it's interesting to see because with The Walking Dead gone, there is a emptiness in the lead for the survival genre, and so with The Walking Dead's mini series or whatever you want to call them, with Daryl and Dead City and all and the Maggie or not Maggie, Rick and Michonne uh, series, they're coming, but they're not here yet. So there is a vacuum there, and The Last of Us, I think, may very well be on its way of fulfilling that emptiness.
Okay.
And there's action, there's bumps and scares and frights and jump scares. Obviously we all have them,
Are there
but
any snips and snails and puppy dog tails?
you know what, stay tuned.
Oh, interesting. A
But
teaser.
a teaser, but I do believe that the storytelling has been very personal in the second episode. You
Mhm.
were introduced to the world of the first one and trying to learn some of the roles of the new world. The second one was a more intimate journey, uh, uh, continuance from the end of the first episode. I don't want to do any spoilers here.
Sure.
So you get to that more personal storytelling effect, and with that you can really build the tension
Right.
and the emotion and the suspense and the thriller and horror aspect of Last of Us. So I think the second episode delivered what it needed to keep people tuned in, and we'll see how episode 3 does.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses. Hopefully, it's given time to build the universe and the story that they want to tell. So far, I've heard very positive things about that. So that pretty much brings us to the end of what we wanted to talk about, sort of in a format this evening. But I got a one or two freestyle things, if you would allow me to do so.
I
There,
said this
thank
time.
you. I appreciate that. So there are some shows that are sort of on the chopping block or could go either way. I was looking at the TV cancellation, the latest information from this evening. So I just want to touch on a couple of those things. On a personal note, because I'm old, this bothered me. NCIS Los Angeles was officially canceled this week after 14 seasons. Really good run on that. However, that will leave NCIS the mothership, which more than likely is going to be renewed, and NCIS Hawaii as the two NCIS franchises. But when I was going through the list of some other things, there are some sci-fi, some fantasy shows that are kind of up in the air right now. The first one being La Brea, which I and Lady Cephas are big fans of. We greatly enjoyed the first season. We've watched up to the mid-season finale this season. It's gotten a little bit more convoluted. But as best as I can tell, and from what my sources are saying, it could go either way. Um, Hopefully it will be re-renewed. But it doesn't have the watch hours, the watch time, the bumps after it airs live. A lot of shows live off of those bumps that come the next day or over that 5 day or 7 day period. Unfortunately, it's not getting that particular bump. The other show that has a bit of a fantasy edge to it is The Blacklist, which is going into season 10. It'll be coming on the end of February. And it always starts, or at least for the last 3 or 4 seasons, it started with, will this be the year it gets canceled? And every time, just when you think it is, NBC
It
Universal,
survives.
yeah, they renew it. So it'll be interesting to see if that show, and if you've never watched it or you're wondering how does that fit into fantasy, watch the show. Because there are things that they just cannot be explained outside of creative licenses that you might need to take with a story to move things along. So it'll be
And
interesting
even
to see how some of these franchises do by the end of the season.
and even if you don't watch it for the fantasy aspect that
Mhm.
he's alluding to, that I haven't reached yet.
Mhm.
Season one, very good,
Mhm.
and it gives you a new appreciation to James Spader, who's just made me want to go out and buy a bowler hat.
Anybody that has to give that kind of monologue, like every show, he's fantastic at it, which
Oh,
really was difficult for me to watch Age of Ultron with him being the voice because I was so fixated on what verbiage they were giving him, how he could pull it off, that it kind of distracted me a little bit the first time from the actual movements of the CGI. So I'm like,
yeah.
I'm listening to James Spader. Don't bother me. Oh wait, he's an AI who's doing these kind of things. But yeah, he does an excellent job with that. And if you wonder where he got started and being able to do that, you'll find some old episodes of Boston Legal and watch him on that show and hear him and William Shatner together was
Jimmy
comedy.
Crane.
Jenny Crane, comedy gold. And so I would recommend that you watch that. Well, Earl, that's all I really had left to freestyle. Did you have anything that you wanted to talk about?
Yes, I actually did.
Oh, okay.
Um, my question is, will this be too over the top rope if I discuss it? But I digress. I go into it. I
Well, you have 2 minutes before the next person comes out and removes you from the Zoom broadcast. You better go ahead and get it in now.
You see it's okay because I can hop around on one foot as long as
Mm,
both feet aren't touching. So I
mm,
think we should pull it back to what we're going to do in a few days. I mean,
mhm.
actually, it's less than 2 days now because
Well,
it's
it is now. Yeah, it truly is a midnight magic musing.
yeah.
Yes, it is.
um, part of the if you've never watched wrestling, I would recommend. It's tune in because the Royal Rumble is a spectacle. It is it's akin to a gladiatorial combat, and it's a scripted sport. Okay, take that for what it is, but these are athletes that are choreographed, and they take real bumps, and it doesn't feel good when you hit those wires or the ropes that are wrapped in, or the boards under the mat. But the fact is, it is a sport, but it's also sports entertainment. So you get a lot of the sometimes it's over characterized their mannerisms and whatnot for effect, but it's a lot of fun. And if you're gonna watch one, for me, my favorite pay-per-view has always been the Royal Rumble
Mhm.
because of the Royal Rumble itself. You have and I'll let Lord Cephas explain to you what the Royal Rumble really is.
Sure. So back in the late 80s, one of the employees of then WWF, but eventually WWE, by the name of Pat Patterson, had an idea for Battle Royal. Battle Royal, usually you get 10, 15, 20 people into the ring, and then they wrestle, and then you throw them over the rope, and when they touch the floor, they're out till there's one winner. Pat Patterson came up with the idea of what if we brought everybody out in 2 minute increments? We start with two, and then we just keep adding people until we get to number 30. And that was the genesis of the idea. Hacksaw Jim Duggan won the first televised one in 1988. That was aired on the USA Network. Oh, that's
Oh,
right, 2x4 and all. From there, you would see Big John Studd win the Rumble in '89. Hogan won it in, or no, was it '89? Because Hogan won it in 90, 90,
90,
in 90 and 91.
because of
Because he
92.
because in '92 there was a fellow by the name of
Woo!
the Nature Boy Ric Flair who won it, who said in the back with a tear in my eye, "This is the greatest moment of my life." Not that I've watched it enough to be able to quote it, but I quoted it. And so it is a lot of fun because you get to see 30 individuals, not all in the ring at the same time. That's never happened and is never going to happen because it's just too difficult with that massive
Yeah.
humanity, either on the women's side or the men's side. And they're very equal opportunity in WWE. Both the men get theirs, the women get theirs. The point is the winner of the Rumble on the men's side and on the women's side will earn a shot at the either the women's champion for the women winner or the men's champion for the men's winner at WrestleMania. They will be able to challenge for a world championship. And so that is the focus, the idea of what this Royal Rumble actually means. Every year, the winner gets to challenge to WrestleMania. And so I would just encourage you, if you want a good time with your family, watch it. It's going to be family friendly. They are TV PG for a reason with the sponsorships that they have. In fact, one of the matches that is not a Rumble match is actually a Pitch Black match, which is sponsored by Mountain Dew Pitch Black.
Yep.
What's going to happen? Nobody knows because they won't say. So I might just tune in just for that fact alone to see what a Pitch Black match actually looks like.
You know what I want to see for that pitch black match? I want 12 minutes of you can't see the ring. All you hear is, oh, ding, ding, ding. The light comes on. I would die laughing. You know, I'm
So
sure nobody else would enjoy that, but I would thoroughly enjoy something like that.
you're a sick man. They used to have a thing
Yes, yes.
called lights out matches, and what that meant was after the main event was over, they'd turn the lights off in the arena, and then they'd turn the lights back on, and that would signify this match was unsanctioned, even though there was a referee out there, which made no sense if it was an unsanctioned match. But I digress. So they have had some lights out, some blackout matches before. This one will probably be a spectacle if the Undertaker's involved. So I look forward to it. I'm looking forward to watching it, enjoying it, and talking with you, Earl, about it when it's all said and done, and sharing our thoughts, opinions, and our continued zaniness with the listeners and the viewers at home.
Sounds good to me. So, all of you, remember Saturday night. If you want to watch it, it kicks off at, I believe it's 8 p.m. on Saturday night.
8 p.m. is the start of the main program. 7 o'clock is the pregame show, and there is, I believe, a match during the pregame show as well.
And then at 11 ish, we will be hopping on and recording our thoughts and ideas and jokes and
Yep.
all that wonderful fun stuff. And we'll be throwing it out there to you. So definitely tune in and watch it if you want, or just check up with us and see what our opinions are.
Yep.
And, if who we thought should win should win. And I'm not sure who I want to win, but
And
we will.
there's always going to be somebody who you don't expect. There'll be a veteran who returns to kind of pop the crowd, or maybe a
Taka.
celebrity. I don't know that he can walk to the ring after his injuries. We've had celebrities be involved. Drew Carey, the Johnny Knoxville crew were in it one year. Colin Jost, and who's the other guy that does SNL, the Weekend Update? There's two of them,
Yeah.
and they were in it one year.
No mention of WC's David Arquette.
I'm a big fan of David Arquette.
World champion
You
David
know,
Arquette.
we will have to cover that on one of our wrestling podcasts. I know no one here wants to hear that, but I'll simply say better person, than people give him credit for. And we'll touch on that at a later time. But we want to thank you for putting up with our zaniness tonight. We are recording literally a Midnight Magic Musing. And we're happy about it. We're a little giddy, a little punch drunk because, well, it's been a long day for both of us, but we absolutely wanted to share our thoughts, opinions, and ideas with you. We appreciate you. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe, leave a comment. It really does help the YouTube algorithm and it helps us. Click that notification bell. It will tell you anytime that we drop a video for Midnight Magic Musings or with the Combat One Wrestling podcast, or we've started doing shorts as well. And those debuted this week as well to a lot of positive response. So we appreciate you being a part of this community with us. So for the Earl of Florida, I'm simply your humble host, the Lord Cephas. We appreciate you joining us for this week. We will see you on our YouTube channel, Midnight Magic Musings, very, very soon. Take care, everybody.